Orion stepped out of the Academy's library with a faint, satisfied smile. The 3 memory crystals were placed inside his inventory, and he planned to use them once he get back home. Feeling the crisp morning air of the Thunder Peak Royal Academy, he made his way towards the exit. Passing through the huge Academy gate, he soon spotted the location of his luxurious obsidian carriage. Lucan looked curiously towards him and raised an eyebrow and asked with a playful tone, "Did you went for a quickie, young master? Why back so soon?" Orion's lips twitched hearing his words as he looked at him. "You, sigh. Anyways, I got what I needed from the Academy." Edgar lightly slapped Lucan's back of the head before calmly asking Orion, "Then should we head back, young master?" Looking towards the outer rings, Orion shook his head. "No, let's go to the limitless heaven. I feel like it's been years since I last met with Magi." While rubbing the back of his head, Lucan said, "Years? It's not even been a week though." Orion lightly smiled and boarded the carriage before Edgar and Lucan looked at each other before getting to their respective spots. The carriage rolled smoothly through the capital, wheels humming softly over the cobbled streets as it headed for the 4th ring. After reaching the 4th ring, Orion once again saw the increase in numbers of passers-by as well as merchants and adventurers. The carriage continued traveling before soon arriving outside the shopping district. Orion descended and headed straight for the limitless heaven with Eldrick on his side. Soon, he reached the 3-story building where the guards greeted him respectfully. He nodded back at them before entering the establishment. He directly ascended to the 3rd floor with Edgar where Magi usually stays. The air here carried a faint fragrance of polished wood and aged wine. At the center, Magi sat at his lavish desk, a half-finished mug of beer in one hand and a relaxed smile on his face. Perched comfortably on his shoulder was Luna, the white rabbit, whose twitching nose betrayed mild curiosity at Orion's arrival. "Magi," Orion greeted with an amused grin, "will you ever stop drinking or not?" Magi chuckled, standing to greet him and placing the bottle back on the table with care. "Boss, it's rare for me to relax like this. The business is finally running smooth enough that I have the luxury to sit idle and drink for once." Orion returned the smile, stepping closer. "Then how's the business going?" With a wry tilt of his lips, Magi shrugged. "What changes could there be in such a short time?" Orion laughed softly, scratching his chin. "Ah, right. I keep forgetting, it hasn't even been a week. Guess you won't have any money for me, then." Magi's lips twitched in mock irritation. "Why do you always come to empty my coffers? And this time, you didn't even wait a few days." Luna gave a faint flick of her ears as if echoing the sentiment. Orion lightly laughed, a playful gleam flickering in his eyes as he looked at Magi's mock irritation. "Money generates money, Magi. Didn't I give you a mountain of goods precisely for that?" Magi dragged a palm down his face, Luna mirroring the motion with a slow ear swipe. "Boss, I know the proverb. But first I have to sell the mountain. Mountains don't move themselves, unless they explode, and even the nobles take their time contemplating their purchases." He tipped the mug, grimaced, then set it down with a clink. "Inventory's deep. Wallet, not so much." Edgar folded his arms, gaze flicking over ledgers stacked like bricks along the far shelf. "Margins look healthy from here," he observed. "But your throughput is strangled by floor space and staff. You need more counters, more hands, and faster distribution of goods." Orion nodded. "Then expand. We've proven the brand, Limitless Heaven draws nobles and madmen like bees to a peach blossom." He pointed down through the floorboards as if he could see the bustling district below. "Since we've covered the major trade cities, Silver Fall, Emberlyn, Blackrock, next step is breadth. I want a heaven in every city of the kingdom. No more prestige-only presence." Magi's brows inched up. Luna's nose twitched. "All cities?" He leaned back, eyes sliding to the wall map ringed with colored pins. "That's supply lines, permits, tenant guilds, hasten the work fees, recruitment, training. Security," Edgar added. 2 detachments per branch minimum and hire guards from mercenary guild. Rotate veterans of our house to seed discipline among them. Brand uniformity, Orion went on. Same darkwood facades, carved signboards, attendants who actually smile like they mean it even to the poor. First floor stays approachable, trinkets, potions, common reagents. Second floor for the real buyers. And improve the third floor, make a few separate rooms here for private deal and improve your office. There should be a hall in the center of the third floor with some of our best treasures on display. He smirked. And yes, 3 ridiculous treasures on the ground level as bait. People climb to look, and they buy on the way down. Magi couldn't help a laugh at that. It works indecently well. He pushed a ledger aside and pulled another, the page already cluttered with scribbles. We'll need a training syllabus. Cash handling, valuation, basic appraisal, polite ways to say no to high-ranking nobles with unpaid tabs. Draft it, Orion said. And recruit a wood element appraiser if you can sniff one out. I'm upping our purchasing light mithril, lustrum salts, consecrated parchment, anything aligned to purification. Demands will spike, and I'd rather be the spike. Magi's eyes sharpened. Due to the war with the demons? Nobles have yet to start purchasing such things in bulk. Some are probably not informed while others don't want to create panic among the masses. Exactly, and we are some of the few people who can buy such stuff in bulk and silently, Orion replied, his lips curling into a slight smile. Put a discreet bounty on rare light-attuned materials. Nothing splashy. Edgar cleared his throat. Transport? Contract caravans for the safe lanes, Orion said. For the rough ones, well, you will figure something out. Keep manifest split. No single wagon should ever be worth a raid. Magi whistled, already writing. Luna hopped down to his desk and plopped herself on the ledger as if stamping approval. Fine. We pilot 5 towns within the fortnight. If the numbers sing, we roll to 15 in a couple weeks. He looked up, a glint of challenge in his eye. But I'm tapping the profits to fund growth. No bleeding me dry for your protection fees until the branches breathe. Orion grinned, shameless. We'll see. Magi pinched the bridge of his nose. Boss. All right, Orion relented, amusement warming his tone. I'll only take a symbolic gesture. That's worse, Magi muttered, but his mouth was betraying him with a smile. You and your symbolism. Edgar's lips twitched. Consider making the gesture a ribbon cutting instead of a coin cutting. That's unnecessary, coin cutting is an art, don't worry about it, Orion said playfully. He turned, looking at the office filled with parchments and some small trinkets before looking out of the window. Good work, Magi. Heaven looks like it belongs at the heart of the district now. Magi bowed his head slightly, as long as you don't forget your promise. Orion slightly smiled, don't worry, I won't forget what I promised you. You just need to ask for it. Magi nodded his head as Orion turned while lifting a hand in a lazy wave as he headed for the stairs. I'll come back later for the protection fees. Keep it ready, haha. Just kill me already, Magi nearly cried out. Now how can I do that to my dear debt collector? Orion laughingly replied back over his shoulder. Edgar followed, chuckling under his breath. Behind them, Magi exhaled, the sound turning into a low, helpless laugh. He sank back into his chair, scooped Luna into the crook of his arm, and reclaimed his bottle. The rabbit settled like a tiny, judgmental scarf as he stared at the map again, pins, routes, cities. Every city, he murmured to Luna, lifting the mug in a toast to impossible timetables and a ridiculous boss. All right, little lady. Let's build an empire. Luna's ears flicked like a rubber stamp of approval. Magi took a gulp of his wine and set the mug down because calm was fleeting in this line of work. He once again picked up his quill and began drafting plans. The two of them, Orion and Edgar, took the broad stair down from the 3rd floor, voices and clinking glassware from the shop below rising to meet them. At the foot of the stairs, sunlight cut a bright stripe across the entry, and beyond the doors the carriage lane gleamed like a ribbon. Lucan was slumped on the driver's bench, a random hat over his face, reins looped lazily around one wrist. A soft snore leaked out from his mouth. Edgar came to stand beside the wheel, arms crossed, wearing the exact expression of a man trying not to laugh. "Exemplary vigilance, I must say," he murmured, then rapped the carriage rail with two knuckles. Lucan jerked upright, hat flying. "I was resting my eyes." "On duty," Edgar said, deadpan. "In broad daylight." Lucan cleared his throat and attempted dignity. "I was keeping watch from my dreams." He blinked at Orion, caught the young master's helpless shake of the head, and surrendered with a sheepish grin. All right. Back to work." They boarded the carriage as it rolled toward the second ring, wheels humming, city smell shifting from the spice and smoke of the fourth ring market to the lilac gardens and slate fountains of the noble districts. By the time the high, ironwood gates of Hellstorm Estate came into view, the sun had climbed to the top of their heads. The moment the carriage stopped outside the mansion, Orion stepped down. "Uncle Edgar, Brother Lucan," he said, turning to them both, "I'll skip drills for now. Picked up a few things at the academy I need to read before I start breaking bones again." Edgar's eyes softened with approval. "That's good as well. That's the diligence someone who aspires for great things should have." He thumped Lucan on the shoulder. "You, on the other hand, nap when we're not in public at least." Lucan raised a hand in solemn oath. "I will dream responsibly." Edgar just helplessly shook his head at his words. Orion entered the mansion doors and headed inside. A maid bowed as he passed the gallery, another whisked aside a vase taller than a grown man. He reached his room and closed the door. "All right, let's see now." He drew the silent hall cube from his inventory and set it in the center of the room. Mana crystals chimed softly as he fed them into their receptacles, the cube pulsed, and reality shifted. A pressureless sense of self spread outward, sealing the space. From the corridor, anyone peeking in would see a tidy room, sunlight on a neatly made bed, a perfectly folded throw, with Orion at the center of the room meditating. Orion cleared a space on the low table and placed the 3 memory crystals in a neat triangle. -1 faintly gold, light element treatise. -1 clear shot through with slender white filaments, tier 9 spell, heavenly radiance, divine purification. And 1 the pale blue of winter glass, filled with tiny runic lines, runic and mana circuit theory. Lumi popped into a small, translucent projection above the table, hovering in front of him. "Study time." Her gaze flicked between the crystals like a woman choosing what makeup to put. "Which first, master?" "The light compendium is juicy, but the circuits will make your future spells cleaner." Orion tapped the blue crystal. "First the foundations. I won't be able to use light element right away and I need to learn more about runic and mana circuit theory. If I can break down the light spell with them, then I can create many light affinity spells and then I will bully my light element into casting offensive spells." "Oh. Bully the light. Villain arc unlocked?" No, what do you take me as? A villain?" "I'm just helping light reach its full potential," he said with a playful chuckle, then settled cross-legged on the rug. He pressed 2 fingers to the runic and mana circuit crystal and funneled a thread of mana into it. The stone warmed. Lines lit inside like a city scene from the sky, avenues, loops, junctions, and then the room fell away. Information unfolded in clean, layered panes, basic definitions first, then diagrams. He saw old runes, flow, disperse, drain, combined into various mixed runes, flow weave, oscillation lattice, rosette key. Mana circuit theory stepped in alongside. There were warnings about dirty flow impurities introduced by mismatched elements, about resonance collapse when a circuit's natural frequency was abused by brute force power. Orion's brows drew together. A memory flashed of the 30th step puzzle, the jumbled formation he'd wrestled with for 81 days. Now, with the framework under his hands, he recognized shapes he'd intuited, all the things he had brute forced in the puzzle coming together. "Ha," he breathed, half a laugh. "So I wasn't just guessing." "You never guess, master, you aim intuitively." Lumi teased, but her tone was warm. Look at the subchapter on elemental bias correction. That might help for your dual wielding or when you try to fuse multiple elements later. He slid the pane. The author of the book described the details in a funny way. He read it with relish. He could almost feel his future spell creation becoming easier due to this. Time, inside the cube's false afternoon, softened. And he eventually stepped from theory to practice, taking out a parchment and his quill. He began as common mistakes were drawn like crime scenes. He then corrected them while thinking about the things he read in the memory crystal. He did 3, then 5. On the 7th, he paused, seeing again the 40th step's skyrending hand, and smoothed his impatience into the line work. He continued practicing the new rune combination he was learning. Time continued to pass as evening came closer. Finally, he stopped practicing and put down the quill. Orion rolled his shoulders until his bones popped like rice in a hot pan, then stood and stretched for a bit. "All right," he said, "stop the limitless ascension field." "I'm done." "Ending field." Lumi's window gave a tiny wink, the faint pressure that had made thought feel spring-loaded eased out of the room like a tide. He moved to the silent hall cube, set a palm on its top, and turned the mana off. The silent field in the room thinned until the room felt ordinary again. He tucked the cube back into his inventory, glanced once at the 3 crystals lined like obedient soldiers, put them in his inventory, and exhaled. I should go and talk with Seraph for a bit now." "Yes, you haven't talked with her today," Lumi said, already dimming her projection into a small, hovering screen that seemed to salute him with her ka-emojios. Orion lightly smiled and turned around to head out of the room as he shut the door behind him. He soon reached Seraph's room, knocked twice, and she opened the door. Smiling lightly, Orion headed inside and chatted with her for a long time as she seemed to have improved a lot during this time. Even her speech seemed to be improving each day. Orion noticed that she seemed to be hesitating about telling him something, but he didn't press and decided to wait and see when she would tell him whatever she wanted. After coming out of Seraph's room, he headed straight for the dining hall. Reaching the hall, he took his usual place at the long dining table, the one that always felt too grand when it was just the 3 of them. Eldrick watched Orion demolish a slice of bread and hummed, pleased. "Lad," he said, tearing his own bread, "that little guy, Magi, is doing something big, HM? He's asked for more guards and a list of our city contacts down to the minor barons." Orion's mouth curled into a smile. "Yes, Grandpa. We plan to take limitless heaven across the kingdom as fast as reasonable." He's already sketching routes while clutching a bottle and his rabbit. Celine's lips curved. "Luna is adorable, I saw her a few days ago when I went out," she said, as if that mattered to profit margins. "And Magi has a good head, even if he keeps it slightly pickled." Eldrick chuckled in amusement. "Expansion's good, so long as you don't starve the root to feed the branches. Any other plans tucked behind in that scheming head of yours?" Orion paused, rolling the stem of his glass between thumb and forefinger. The thought had been hardening since the carriage ride. "Yes," he said, his voice turning serious. "I want to build a hidden hand. Quiet eyes and ears. Orphans, slaves, those who won't be missed if lost. Train them, feed them, give them names again, and point them in the right direction. With enough resources, we can make capable people in months, not years. If we can also recruit a few professional and trustworthy people, we can speed things up." Celine's expression softened to concern and pride. "There is merit in it," she said gently. "But you must choose carefully. People shaped by hunger are sharp. They cut both ways." "I know." Orion swirled his glass while continuing, "The trick will be layering loyalties. House stipends, decent contracts, personal advancement. If they owe the Hellstorms a future, they won't sell the present to the highest bidder." Eldrick stroked his beard, eyes distant in that way that meant he was unraveling maps in his head. You'll need people who can read between the lines and can be used for more work. I can lend you 2 from the old border network for a while. They will teach your core team and they can take over the rest then. After that, your web is your own to maintain." Orion put a hand to his chest theatrically. Sigh. And here I thought you'd do it all for me. Celine softly laughed at his words. You also need to learn how to recognize other people's natures, dear. This will be very good practice. He grinned, accepting the quest. Very well. Since we've about a week before the next expedition, I'll start recruiting. I will get Magi to go with me in the next couple of days and also get a courtyard in the 4th ring for them. And, we'll add a reading stipend and tutors. A spy who can't read is a bird with one wing. Eldrick sipped from his cup. Spoken like a proper troublemaker. Then the group continued eating in silence while occasionally chatting about idle topics. Orion also told them about some of his plans. When the plates were cleared and tea arrived, Eldrick tapped the table softly. One more thing. If you're buying light-attuned reagents in bulk, do it discreetly. No need to advertise our intentions to anyone with a ledger and eyes. Orion nodded. Magi and I already agreed to that. He'll love the paperwork. Celine hid a smile behind her cup. Do try not to make him cry. How can I do that? He's such a punchab, lovely guy. Of course I'll take care of him, Orion said, rising with them as the last of the tea vanished. The door to his room closed shut, and the hush returned like his ex. He set the silent hall cube down and turned it on as it already had mana crystals from before. The veil unfurled until the room was enveloped in it. Field? He asked. Limitless ascension field, deployed on the battlefield. Greater than over equal to nabla less than over equal to, /. Lumi excitedly said, as the second field enveloped the entire room. He took his seat at the desk and took out the golden memory crystal from his inventory, placing it in front of him. Light element, he said, and sent a thread of mana into it. The crystal warmed beneath his fingertips like a sunstone, then bloomed open in his mind, panes of luminant script unfolding into diagrams, notations, and spoken paragraphs that felt half lecture, half prayer. He settled in and let it pour through him. Light, the compendium began, is not merely brightness. It is order given form, information carried on purity. 3 primary phases: illumination, to reveal, purification, to cleanse, and judgment, to weigh and cut. In the weave of reality, light rides the finest channels. It hates turbulence. It loves proportion. It refuses to anchor in rage. So, not a fan of your bully the light plan, Lumi teased, her tiny window bobbing. I'll persuade it nicely, Orion murmured, smile ghosting. Flatter it with symmetry. Pages turned without hands. He memorized the fundamentals. Light's high-frequency mana prefers narrow conduits, rounded corners, and mirror-smooth circuits. Spikes and right angles introduce glare, harmful to the caster. Occlusion causes echo, feedback loops that blind the mind's eye. The properties read like a master craftsman's notes, refraction tables, phase diagrams, anchoring mantras. He mapped them to the circuits he already knew: flow, bind, disperse, and the others. Next came the history part of the memory crystal, a lens on Zarathal's past. The Saintess, a title rarely given to someone whose name was forgotten with time, standing in the ash winds during the third demon surge, raising lantern cities along the plague roads. She could not conjure spears, the text said, but her wards never failed. Villages sheltered under a dawn canopy, a hemispherical lattice that filtered demonic miasma to dust. She burned no demons outright, she unmade the filth that birthed them, and in the clean air, human steel did the rest. When the book showed a sketch of farmers laughing as a field's blight turned to dew, Orion felt his chest loosen. Light's truest violence was mercy. She sounds amazing. Lumi breathed a sigh of respect. She knew where to cut, he agreed softly. At the root. The text did not shy from warnings. Light was not an element just anyone could bear. Light misaligned to pride would scour the self first, stripping nuance until the world became a theater of villains. Orion committed the margin notes to memory as carefully as the spells he engraved in his SOC. And then, the prize he'd hoped for, the affinity rune of light. A complicated blend of mana circuits and runic inscriptions it was. Do you want me to project a map of this? Lumi offered, trying to be helpful and adorable at once. No need for that. He traced in the air, not daring to try it on a parchment yet, letting muscle memory learn the ratios. Hours passed, his mental slate filled with repetition, failure, correction. The light affinity rune proved to be much harder than the rest he had learned. He laughed under his breath and read on. He read until the moon dragged itself across the window and hid behind the walls, until the mana lamp seemed to dim down. He read until the shape of light felt less like a stranger at his table and more like a principled guest he knew for quite a bit. When the last pane of the crystal dimmed, he sat back, closed his eyes, and breathed out everything he'd taken in. For an hour, he let basic mana breathing rake through the fatigue, smoothing thought and muscle both. The knock came just after dawn. Master? Rena's voice, soft but bright through the field's glamour. Are you up yet or not? It's morning already. He stood up and went towards the cube before deactivating it. He also deactivated the Limitless Ascension field and went to open the door. Rena's blonde hair was braided with blooms, Fiora's eyes were keen, looking at Orion with the same adorable gaze as always. They both smiled toward Orion. Morning, he said with a warm smile. You two really come at the right time always. Fiora blushed a little at his compliment while Rena smirked, then let us refresh you from your night's tiredness. Orion smiled and nodded as the two of them picked up towels from his room and got him to the bathroom. The luxurious obsidian carriage rolled on the polished roads of the royal capital. Back to Magi already, young master? Edgar asked once they were past the second ring and into the third, curiosity filling his usual calm face. Yes, Orion said, looking back at him. There are some things I want to discuss with him, and increase his work a little as well. Maybe this will keep him from drinking too much alcohol. Edgar nodded his head thoughtfully. The wheels hummed over cobbles, the city's layers peeling by, from the second ring's quiet environment to the market's loud heart. When they reached the shopping district, Lucan drew up, Orion and Edgar stepped down, and Lucan produced, as predicted, a reason to remain. Orion waved him away with a muttered, "Dream responsibly," and took the street. Limitless Heaven's facade cut clean and dark against the bustle, its carved sign swaying like a satisfied cat's tail. They headed directly for the shop. At another part of the second ring, House Delmire's great hall had lost its music. Where minstrels once sat, dust had settled. The banners at the walls hung heavy, their grandeur somehow smaller than yesterday. At the far end, in the high-backed chair that had been carved for men who made decisions, the old patriarch of Delmire leaned forward, knuckles white on lion-headed armrests. What did you do? His voice was low and cold, worse than a shout. How did every heir of our house die while I was away? The current Marquis, successor of the old man in front of him, could not meet the old man's eyes. His hand shook a little, then steadied by force. Father, it's because of those damn hellstorms. They killed our blood. That is impossible. The old man's gaze was as still as an old well. That old wolf does not move without cause. Tell me what you did. Silence held for 3 heartbeats. Then the Marquis swallowed hard. We found out a secret, he said, each word worse than the last. One of the Hellstorm maids is a draconian. How? The patriarch's voice snapped like a whip. How did you discover what they shelter in their own house? He paused. And do not tell me rumor. The Marquis drew from his sleeve a mirror no larger than a man's palm. Its surface was not quite silver, not quite glass, it bent the candlelight around itself. I took this from an old ruin, he said, shame making his voice small. It shows true face. My son took it out to play, used it in the market. He glimpsed the hellstorm maid there. The mirror showed the true face of her. The old man's nostrils flared. And then? We sold the information, the Marquis whispered. The insanity creed paid well. We thought. You did not think. The patriarch's hand slammed the armrest. The lion's head shattered upon impact. You handed a viper to lunatics who poison wells because they can. You gave them a thread to pull. His eyes cut like knives. Do you know what House Duskvale does when given order? The younger man's mouth opened, then shut. There was no answer that would save him. I need to fix this mess, the old man said at last, rising with a stiffness that was not age so much as grief hardened into iron. He turned away. For a long moment, the hall heard only the slow step of a man walking toward a war of his own house's making. The mirror lay on the table like an accusation, as if all of this was its fault. Orion's hand slid on the stairway to the third floor, polished to silk by months of traffic. The scent up here held the same feel as before, polished wood, old paint, and the smell of old treasures that came and went away. Lumi drifted beside his shoulder, tiny window bright. Do you want me to bet on how many ledgers are stacked on his desk today? My guess is, yes. Too many to count. Exactly my number, and they will also be increasing today, Orion murmured, lips quirking. Edgar paced slightly behind, giving him the space that meant I'm here if you need me, not if you don't. Below, the murmur of the first floor, buyers just looking at bait treasures, the soft hum of coins as buyers made their decisions, rose like a tide that knew which shore it wanted. Above, at the end of the hall, the door to Magi's office was ajar. Light from the window lay across the threshold in a clean bar. Inside, a rabbit's ear flicked. Orion came to the gates and knocked twice while saying, Magi? Boss? Magi called, voice muffled and amused. If you've come for protection fees again, then just kill me. Tempting, Orion said, stepping in with a grin. But today I came for different work. Magi pushed back his chair so fast Luna had to hop to the table to keep her footing. Paper slithered like startled fish. He walked around the desk, palms placed firmly on the edge, and peered at Orion as if measuring the size of the storm about to hit him. What more work, boss? Aren't I busy enough? He swept a hand over the table, inkpots, tied contracts, a scattering of seal stamps like sleepy beetles. These are not decorative. Orion's mouth curved into a wicked half-smile. I notice you still have time for booze, so clearly you have time for more work. And relax, I won't dump everything on you. Magi's eyes narrowed in suspicion. At least tell me what you planned this time. Orion's gaze flicked to the right side, two low sofas facing each other over a tea table, cushions worn in by too many negotiations over the months. First sit. This'll make more sense and keep you from fainting. By all means, Magi said, resigned and curious in equal measure. He led them over. Orion took the left sofa, Edgar stood at his shoulder like a carved helmsman. Magi sat opposite him, Luna reclaiming her throne on his shoulder, whiskers flapping up and down. Won't offer me wine? Orion said teasingly as he settled, one brow up. We've known each other for years. Magi's lips twitched. Years? Boss, it hasn't even been one. It has, however, aged me at least 3. Still, he flicked his ring and produced a pear-bellied gourd, pouring 3 small cups. This is Starfall Eastern Beauty. If this doesn't make you weep, you're dehydrated. Orion lifted his cup, peering at the liquid's faint glow. My first alcoholic drink in this world, he murmured, mostly to himself. Huh? You say something? Magi turned his head to look at him while handing Edgar the second cup. Nothing, Orion said, amused, and took a small sip. After a single sip, he'd unfolded like moonlight on still water. There was the breath of starflower, and a small hint of frost apple. It lingered softly, leaving the sense of night air perfumed with distant blossoms. Damn, he said, eyes brightening. I must commend you. This is the best drink I've had yet. Magi's lips curled up with satisfaction, clinking his cup against Orion's with a flourish. Of course. Who do you take me for? I am Magi Alzareth. Bad wine refuses to follow me home on principle. Edgar sniffed his cup before taking a small sip to savor it. His face formed a smile of satisfaction as the wine passed his old standards. They let the first cups be cups, idle talk of the capital's mood, a new banner on the shop, which pastry maker had started a war by claiming to have invented a new better pastry. Orion set his empty cup down, it made a quiet click on the wood. His gaze turning serious. Now, he said, let's start the serious talks. He reached into his ring, drew out the silent hall cube, and set it on the table between them. With a thumb press, the cube made a quiet noise. A soft, clear barrier rolled out, reaching the walls, the windows, the door, the floorboards, and then vanishing to the eye, as if the room had inhaled and decided to hold its breath forever. Edgar leaned in, looking at the cube with surprise. A very nice treasure, young master. It can hide from most eyes and its grade is rather high as well. Magi rubbed his hands like a raccoon who'd found a jewelry drawer. We could auction that and make every noble in the inner rings fight theirs. Orion cut him a look. Bit cough, it's for my own use. Magi coughed into his cup, grinning despite himself. Ahem. Proceed please. Orion raised his fingers. I want a second structure under Limitless Heaven, he said. Not to earn a fortune. But people who will have eyes and ears throughout the kingdom and beyond. A hidden force no one sees. He tapped the tabletop. We're expanding across the kingdom. That's a good start. I want to string thread through it. Magi's smile vanished, he went still in that particular way that meant the wine had been placed at the back of his head. Information. Not just gossip, Orion said. Movement of nobles and commoners. Prices of goods and other treasures. The refugees running from the destroyed cities. Shortage of grains at various cities and towns. Demons sniffing at borders. Which magistrate suddenly has funds? Which caravan masters switch routes without stating why? I want all the details in as much clarity as you can get. Edgar folded his arms and nodded his head. Young master seems to be preparing his own force. That's good, Master Eldrick never did things like this. Magi blew out a breath and leaned back, head tilting until Luna had to hop to the other shoulder. All right. What about their covers? Of course there will be multiple, Orion said. We merge them into the business, appraisal interns who visit branches to standardize pricing, route auditors who ride caravans to time each leg, warehouse clerks who can count, write, and listen. A courier subsidiary to move letters for our partner merchants, with a premium lane for nobility. He went on, half will be honest workers, the other half our people. Others will be placed in different businesses. Magi's eyes lit despite himself. A courier service gives us an excuse to head everywhere in the kingdom. And they can also gather intelligence during this time. Exactly. Orion's tone became soft. Recruit from orphans and slaves. Those the world doesn't watch, train them well, pay them better than the alleys, make reading a way of life for them instead of restricting them with it. Give them enough things to make them loyal, stipends to their caretakers, medics who know their names, promotions that mean something. We bind them with future, not with fear. Celine's earlier warning flickered through his head, he did not ignore it. And we must build the infrastructure right, he added. No single person should know more than their level. Middle-level people will gather the data from all over the place and there will only be 3 to 4 of them per city. And then they will send it back to here and you can get some more people to sort out all the information. Edgar's voice was quiet, approving. That's a nice arrangement. This reduces risk of information spreading to other factions and also helps to streamline the work. Safe houses? Magi asked. I'll acquire a courtyard in the 4th ring as academy, study housing, Orion said. Another in the 5th as a textile sorter. Get me a property list by noon tomorrow, Magi. Keep the deeds in someone else's name, not Hellstorm. Magi nodded, already building lists in his head. Staff instructors? Grandpa Eldrick is loaning us 2 veterans from the old border network for a month, Orion said. They'll teach the core and build your first layer. We own it after. Good, Edgar said simply. The talks continued for a while as they fine-tuned the details some more. Boss, Magi said after a moment, tone lighter again as if he'd pulled a different drawer open. You realize this will devour my evenings.